certification from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks and holds a certificate in election administration from the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Furthermore, as a 2022 candidate for Vermont Secretary of State, John championed election cybersecurity, ranked choice voting, and universal vote by mail. So we're so excited to have you. Thank you, John.
Hi. Thanks, everybody. So now I get to talk to you about how to make some of this work to policymakers. And the reason I'm picking on end-to-end verifiability is that that's what's being sold now as the magic bullet. You're going to hear a lot of the same things from me that you heard in the last group, but I'm going to take it at a little different angle and hopefully dig into it a little more. So you've heard about the companies like Votes, Democracy Live, the folks who are really sort of mining into this, or getting into the market and trying to convince states that internet voting is a good idea, all that kind of thing. What they're really selling it on, and I'm going to talk about Bradley Tusk, who, the Mobile Voting Project, who a little more, who's also pushing this in his book, Vote with Your Phone, is that somehow this magic E2EV is the answer to all the problems. You know, a real system that has this, that's all that matters. They're talking about like it's voodoo or something. Policymakers have no idea what they're hearing, okay? This is happening in Vermont. We've already seen it, a new system being pulled into the game here, and I and some other folks managed to stop it, but we've only delayed it because it's gone to a study committee, so it'll be back. But how do you talk to these folks? We've heard about all the problems with internet voting, but how do you make some of this stuff understandable? How do you hit them where they live? And, you know, that's going to be their experts against our experts, them getting wowed, us getting wowed, and us wowing them, the other side wowing them, and they've got this, they're being sold this little magic pill, and it's a problem. So anyways, the last panel stole my joke, is end-to-end verifiability and internet magic bullet. No, but that joke's been done now. So now I'm going to fly through this because there just isn't enough time to get this done, and I don't know if there's going to be time for questions because I want to get to my talking points at the end. I almost want to skip to them. But, okay, so I don't need to go through the security challenge of internet voting. I am going to say electronic ballot delivery is the only one up here that I don't necessarily have a problem with, and I think we heard that from the last speaker too. You want to pick up your ballot on the internet, I don't care. The question is how you get it back or how you transmit that vote. And let me just go through here. Oh, look, it got messed up. Oh well. So the question here is, why will legislators bother despite the screwed up slide here? So disabled voters, we've heard about that. Folks who have trouble getting to the poll. Internet voting is super appealing for them. Voters experiencing natural disasters, which we recently had in Vermont with the flooding. That can make it hard to get to the polls. First responders, you know, folks out taking care of wildfires. And uniformed and overseas citizens absentee voters, or UOCAVA voters. Okay, all of this is slippery slope, right? So if you allow internet voting for one of these groups, even though it's small, it's containable, what are you going to do? You're going to suggest to them that their votes are less deserving of security than everyone else's votes? Of course not. So what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If they get a foot in there, it's going to eventually just inevitably be there for everybody. But these concerns, first thing, do not ever minimize these concerns because you will lose credibility. Okay, these are real concerns. In this, well, I'll get on to the rest later. So E2EV, I'm not going to spend much time in it. It's a paradigm. It's not any kind of particular style of cryptography for those of you who are policymakers. I'm not a crypto guy. The only reason I mentioned at the beginning that I was a certified ethical hacker, which is not something you want to throw around at a place like this, because who wants to get into, you know, cert bombing or something. but was just to make the point that I do know a little of what I'm talking about, but not very much, because CEHs have about, their knowledge is about that thick. But anyways, it gives me a lot of mileage to talk to the rubes with when I get to drop that. It's awesome, actually. But anyways, an election is E2E verifiable if the following two properties hold. Voters can confirm that their selections have been accurately recorded, and anyone, voters and observers, can confirm that the recorded votes have been accurately tallied. It's very cool. There are very cool E2EV systems out there. In a closed loop system that's not on the internet, you know, heck, I run my municipal elections. I got one polling place. None of my machines are networked. I've got 6,500 voters in my jurisdiction. I think if I could print out paper backups then and there, an E2EV vote might be kind of cool. But if it weren't for issues that I'll get to, of auditability particularly. But let's see, I'm going to go through a couple of these. Are a couple of the systems that are out there already. But I don't want to. Okay, so E2EV, you're going to hear, they're going to say, is good on defense. It does have a lot of defense. Basically, a lot of the malware, if it's done right, and it's not easy to do right, and some of these systems that claim to have it don't have it, or don't have that quality to them. It helps a lot with malware on the tallied end, but I mean, I don't want to go into technical detail on this because, again, I don't have time, and this slideshow was designed for a slightly longer period. But the point is that nobody thinks this is a good idea for government elections. Nobody. The Helios system is one of the crown jewels of the remote E2EV systems. And you know, you can use these systems for voting for, I don't know, America's Got Talent, you know, whatever you want. These are good systems. But for a governmental election, the stakes are too high. And the creator of the Helios system even said a government election is something that you don't want to do over the internet. I don't have an expectation that Helios ever becomes the system for government elections. And there are so many quotes like this. Some of the folks who've been brought up here, I could start reading them off. I have a whole big list in front of me, and I'm not going to do it. This is the expert consensus. Here's some more. Informally putting a server online to support online ballot return is like asking a kid to go play in traffic. It just isn't safe. We heard Dr. Andrew Apple quoted, or Appel. According to clear scientific consensus, no known technology can make internet voting secure. Okay, boom, 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 down the list. I could read this forever. Okay, the point is that the only technological professionals who are going to be supportive of this are going to be the ones who work for the vendors. That's about it. Now, the mobile voting project. All right, we heard a little bit about this. Bradley Tusk, the venture capitalist who started the mobile voting project, he's an uber millionaire, and he is directly involved with votes, directly involved with Democracy Live, and he is directly involved with promoting this stuff to state legislators and to policymakers. He did, I think it was mentioned that he actually paid for this Berkeley Center for Security and Politics paper, it was commissioned by the Mobile Voting Project, which is his outfit, his nonprofit, and he wanted them to come up with best practices for internet voting, right? And they turned around, it was about 40 pros. There were cryptographers, there were security people, there were advocates, there were election administrators like myself. What they came back with was a big disappointment. They said, when internet ballot return is employed, it may be possible for a single attacker to alter thousands or even millions of votes. Okay? He says in his book, if we want to make perfection the standard, we need to get rid of every form of voting. Okay? This is the kind of thing now he's saying in state houses, or not he, but his folks are. And honestly, I think maybe this is a little philosophical, that a lower standard is unacceptable. I think if we decide that there is an acceptable level of loss, and every vote missed is one vote too many, every fraudulent vote is one fraudulent vote too many. So I don't think we start the conversation by defining down our standards. This one you heard a little bit about, so I won't linger on it. And these quotes are all from his book. If the banks can protect our money online, we can definitely protect people's votes during the few times a year they're cast. This is a terrifying standard. For one thing, it's very simple. Anonymity is not part of banking apps, right? You're being connected to an individual, you're being connected to your account. So that's a sort of ridiculous comparison right there. And in his book, Vote with Your Phone, he has this, about a third of it is essays from supportive folks. They're all advocates. He couldn't find a single technical expert to support him on this. All right, let me just go back there a little bit. All right, and just in terms of the banks, 29, these are numbers you all have probably heard. 29% of US adults have experienced some kind of account takeover attack. 42% of those were banking accounts. That equates to about 8.5 million. So these things are vulnerable. We all know that, right? We've all heard stories about, oh, my banking app's been hacked. So to compare that, and that's a big one, I'm harping on it because it's what you hear presented to policymakers. Okay. Auditability is complicated, and I'll just jump down and say that when you're auditing advanced cryptography, it's not the same as getting a couple people sitting down at a table pulling up ballots and double counting them. That makes it a lot harder for the average person. Well, it makes it impossible for the average person or even the average advocacy group to have any real faith in any kind of auditability, and that affects voter trust and voter confidence, which is huge, just probably the hugest thing. Now, okay, there's a million ways you can go about this. There's a million things you can complain about. I think the one that they're going to understand that's going to hit them where they live is when you talk about social engineering, because they all get trained, they're all inundated with things about phishing, phishing, phishing. Don't click on the link. Don't open the attachments. They get that. Okay? They get that. They need to be reminded, they need to understand social engineering, message-based phishing and malware, especially since we're talking internet voting. Most of that, you know, it's going to be done over mobile devices. It's going to be over phones. It's going to be tablets. And I mean, client-side malware is far and away, in my opinion, the biggest threat to the security of an end-to-end verifiable internet voting system. I mean, server-side hackers, crypto buffs might disagree, but this is where I live. And I mean, you know, you need to make them understand that you can get malware that can create, if you're working with an app, a counterfeit app. You can get folks misdirected through, you know, confirmation texts, smishing that says, hey, we're voting electronically, but the system has been changed. Click here to go and verify that you can vote. Click here, don't forget to vote. Click here, here's the system to go and vote. If it's, you know, if it's a web app or something. And that just opens them up to everything, right? If you're just smishing and directing people to crazy websites, I don't have to tell you what that leads to. It's pretty ridiculous. But they need to understand is this whole idea that the cryptographic handshake is not exist in a vacuum. You got this train on one side, you got the train on the other, you got the track going in between. You can make those as secure as you want. And this is an analogy I've used, and I think I've gotten some traction from it. But they're only as secure as the towns they exist in, right? People can get that if you get something downloaded on your phone, you get some sort of malware, you can be screwed, basically. Now, here's some numbers to look at that I like to throw at people. Again, we're talking elected officials. Now, this is very conservative, all right? So I looked at New Hampshire. I looked at just the New Hampshire as a jurisdiction, right? About 1.2 million registered voters. I called just a random commercial site or commercial company, and they were able to give me 129,000 mobile numbers. So let's do a little guess here. Maybe on the commercial list, maybe only 70% of them are registered voters, since about 90% of New Hampshire eligible voters are registered. So that factors out the teenagers too. And that gives you your targetable percentage, right? That means you had reachable voters of 90,163 voters that you could reach out to with the smishing campaign just for making a call to a vendor. This doesn't even get into what you might find available on the dark web or anything. If you apply that smishing click-through rate, and on the high end, you'll see these rates up to 14.5%. That's 1.14% of the electorate who you have just deceived. You compare that, the 2016 US Senate vote in New Hampshire was decided by 0.14%. So the point is, first of all, that folks are going to understand this, but you don't have to change votes to change the outcome of an election, all right? It's like Spock said, right? As a matter of cosmic history, it has always been easier to destroy than to create. Sometimes it can be easier just to screw up ballots, just to keep people from voting, just to blow it up rather than change it. This is the one I say to people and they don't like it, okay? And it's probably pisses everybody off except me. But the problem with when you start talking about a smishing campaign, and we know this from robocalls, voter suppression robocalls, that there's enough demographic information out there to target this stuff demographically. You can target some sort of smishing campaign in an internet voting context against traditionally marginalized communities. And if you're going to do it that way, robocalls do that, but that's not their system. If a state implements an internet voting system, it's theirs. They own it. And then it becomes a civil rights issue that they could have stopped by not getting involved in this in the first place. They hate that. I've got Democracy Live really annoyed at me for saying that, or at least their buddies. I don't know if they are. They pulled a Star Chamber on me once, but I don't have time for that story. All right. I did real quick on distributed denial of service. Their answer to that is it can't happen. We're too good. That's basically it, They'll throw fancy words out at people and talk about load balancing or whatever. But I think it was mentioned a lot of this stuff is done in the cloud. And of course, Amazon in 2019 got this unheard of mega DDoS attack, and that was a long time ago, but I mean the arms race is always increasing, and we have had instances where DDoS attacks have taken down election websites. You can go buy botnets on the dark web, right? Stressors, they're right. Anyways, and then of course there's the election management system hacks. Which is a little unfair to talk about because we're already susceptible to those, but it's there too. I mean, you can get into talking about the types of vulnerabilities that have been found in every implemented system out there, in the Estonian system, and the system they experimented in Australia, the West Virginia system. So I just mentioned this approach just for the sake of mentioning it, but stick with the phishing. Believe me, they're going to understand that. Yeah, well, I'm going to skip that too. All right, now recovery is a big problem for me. I've had to do recounts before. I did one really recently, had one of my elections decided by 4 votes. It's a lot harder to do a recount if everybody's voted on their phone. We're going to get stuck with a revote. And that's a whole different ballgame. Right now, if we do everything right, if people in my office, if I am doing everything right, and we have that paper backup, we have the backup of the entrance checklists, if there's a screwed up election, we'll fix it. It'll take some time. People will have to wait for the final answer, but they will get it. This is how it goes. This is how it happens. But doing an entire revote would be an entirely different ballgame. And it's problematic, and it's one of the real key reasons I don't like it. Finally, voter confidence and public trust. Now, they're going to hear this, okay? Voter confidence, public trust in elections is not good, and it's fragile. All it takes is one of these things to go wrong, one of these things to get in the paper, and you're crashing voter confidence even more. And it's, like I say, there's already a large degree of internet voting happening now. If we're all voting with apps, it's going to get a lot worse. And any time now, we're going to start getting some of these stories as it is. So anyways, that's a big one. That's something that they can understand. Again, this is about weaving through some of the technical stuff so that you can communicate with folks. So let me just run through, I've been trying to fly here, but it looks like I'm already late, the bullet points, okay? E2EV is not a magic bullet. The creators of E2E voting are totally against internet voting, okay? I got Josh Benelow, who's like the guru of it all, has volunteered to testify against the internet voting bill that's coming up in Vermont. You know, he wants nothing to do with it either, and this is governmental internet voting. Even if the transit system is secure, there's nothing to prevent attacks from outside that loop. Make them understand, okay? If the train's station, the train tracks are secure, your town might not be, okay? And that's where the problem is. There is no system that can protect from all election tampering malware on people's home computers or phones. And remember, the click-through rate for phishing on a home computer is even worse. Targeted campaigns, it's like 56%. It's crazy. I was just talking about phones before. One tampered vote is always one too many. People fall prey to these phishing scams that can be built around internet voting, keeping them from casting a real vote and leading to identity theft, not even having the vote change, just not getting to vote. They could be demographically targeted. The DDoS danger is real no matter how many times they tell you it's not. Okay, general talking points. I really want to spend more time talking about Democracy Live and votes and Bradley Tusk with the Mobile Voting Project. I could spend all day talking about those guys, but we're late and I just wanted to plow through here. They've all had problems, and you were hearing all about the problems there. I mean, it was instituted in Delaware was one of the problems, and then they turn around and pull the plug out. It takes enough to get one of these systems actually adopted by a legislature. It had to be pretty bad for them to turn around and change their minds and pull it back. So that's happened before. If you would be afraid to implement this for all voters, doesn't only applying it to overseas and disabled voters say that their voter integrity is less important than anyone else's? You know, that's the opposite side of the sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander question. Voter confidence is fragile. You're going to break it. And finally, banking apps. I put this one as the final because I'm so tired of hearing about banking. We do it online. Oh my God, oh my God. Banking apps are not anonymous or secure enough for elections. And the comparison, you get into this conversation, the comparison only makes the point for you. That's a trap. It's our trap. Let them bring it up. It's all through that book, Vote with Your Phone. Just live there. But never deny the importance of the reasons why internet voting is appealing, or you will lose credibility. Remember, election administrators, and this is kind of a poll for me, right? I'm an election administrator. There's conflict there. I would like to do this, but then the CEH in me says you got to be crazy. Election admins are not the enemy. The folks who are pushing for this are not the enemy. So just remember that. And most important of all, voting is important. Don't forget to vote. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So if you're going to feel this way, if you're going to have these kind of concerns, then make it count. Go out and vote. So anyways, I think I've run way too long. Oh, no, that's not too bad. That was me sprinting too, and it worked out. Do I have time for a couple questions? Two. Any two? There's one. Oh, I'm sorry, have I what? Spousal abuse is an argument to, oh. Oh, coercion. Yeah. Okay, I didn't quite understand. I thought you were making some sort of analogy that I didn't understand. Internet voting is like spousal abuse. Yeah, I mean, the coercion thing for me is always kind of a tricky field to walk in, because then people start bringing it up for vote by mail. I don't want to have that conversation, but it's a very good point.
I was just curious if you could kind of clarify when you were talking about some of these overseas and accessible voting, people being like a slippery slope. And you kind of made the argument that they were less secure, like should they accept that? And I kind of wonder what you say about the last guy that was speaking. He kind of said, you know, hey, the guy that's in a submarine for 6 months and has no other alternative. Is this, do you think there just has to be a hard line somewhere, or do you, like that person can't vote, or you just have to be very clear about where the line is so it's not a slippery slope?
I think obviously this is why you don't want to beat people up for thinking it's a great idea. They're absolutely right. These are big concerns. The question is the cure worse than the disease? That's always the question. I think to most, technically oriented people it is. I think the answers to those things, or to the extent they can be answered, are in policy. When you get right down to it, and you got to make it policies that make it easier to vote, that give you more room to have your vote come in late if it needs to, postmark ballots. But that's, given that this is too dangerous a cure, I think we need to continue to develop public policy that solves as much of that as we can. All righty.